thinking about it. Right, hello. Hopefully, we are now live at last. Good morning. If you're joining us, apologies for the delay.
Technology is a wonderful thing, isn't it, when it works?
When it works, yes. Okay.
Perfect. So, Rubia, do you want to start us off? What are we going to be talking about today?
Yeah, absolutely. So today we're going to be talking about camping. So camping essentially is spending the night somewhere outdoors, away from hotels or homestays or tea houses. So a number of our trips do offer camping as an option for our accommodation. So we'll be talking through a few of those trips. Essentially, the camping element is often part of the challenge itself. So we'll be kind of talking about what can be a bit challenging about it, talking through our apprehensions, what makes it fun, a few of our top tips, and a lot of people with camping kind of think tents, but some of our trips are a bit more unusual as well. So you've got like the Arctic, where you're actually camping out in snow holes and shelters you build yourselves, and then you're sleeping under the stars in the Sahara, and then you've got incredible locations like back to the Zambezi and stuff. So I'm going to hand over to Sarah, who's going to tell us a little bit about the differences between camping here in the UK and camping abroad. So over to you, Sarah.
Yeah, sure. So, yeah, well, I mean, as you've already touched on, our camping trips do vary hugely from trip to trip. The main thing, I think, with all of our trips is to say that you don't have to worry about any of the equipment. Absolutely everything is provided. So one of the facts about going camping in the UK, I always find, is trying to dig everything out the loft or the garage and make sure you've remembered everything, all the little bits of equipment. You don't have to worry about any of that on our trips. Everything is provided. Obviously, you just bring yourself, your kit list, which probably includes a sleeping bag, but everything else is going to be taken care of. And also, on the majority of our trips, the camping is actually fairly, I wouldn't say luxurious, but it's fairly comfortable in that the tents tend to be put up for you. You arrive at camp, you're obviously hot and tired after a long day of trekking. We've got fantastic camp crews who will set the tents up. You'll normally be greeted with a cup of tea or a snack or something when you arrive at camp. There'll be toilet tents pitched, and you don't really have to worry about anything. You can get to camp and you can just chill out and enjoy what is the most amazing setting, because without exception, right, all of our campsites are just in beautiful locations, and you can just really absorb and enjoy that without having to worry about all the other things. It's normally fairly comfortable for eating. There'll be sort of tables and chairs set up. A lot of the time we'll eat outside, but if it is a bit cold on some of our trips, you might be camping at high altitude, it gets a little bit chilly, and then you'll be in a big tent to keep warm in the evening. There'll be a campfire, which is a lovely kind of social point of interaction in the evening. So yeah, it's something that I guess it's sort of hassle-free and worry-free compared to just setting off on your own adventure here in the UK. Yeah, I think, what would you sort of say? Would you agree with that, Lexi?
Completely, yeah. It's like you don't want to use the word luxurious because it's still very basic, but there is something quite relaxing about it. It's a lot less frightening than I think a lot of people think when they're going into it, especially if they've not camped before. Even though there are differences between camping in the UK and camping abroad, it is a very kind of, again, it's kind of like an all-inclusive experience. I don't want it to sound like a kind of holiday because it's not. But like you said, it's just the teams that support us, they just go above and beyond, they make it so that it is a really comfortable and a really fun experience and part of the adventure as well, I would say.
Absolutely.
So, Rubia, what would you say would be the benefits of camping?
So I think the benefits of camping is you can really get off the beaten track with it, where you are out in the wilderness in the middle of nowhere, a bit more of being, back to nature, and the simplicity of it all, I think, is what makes it appealing to everyone. Lexi's just sharing some pictures there just to show how remote it can be. And like I say, it's just getting away from everything, getting out of the rat run, leaving the rat race behind and just enjoying being at the elements, I think. Would you agree?
Yeah,
definitely.
Yeah, I think just the sort of simplicity of it, that you get there, you are just there in the wilderness and just able to really enjoy the here and now and get away from all of those other trappings that you have. Absolutely. Yeah.
I'm just sharing some pictures here of one of our treks in India, and it's just, it is that kind of escape from everything that all the worries and the things that kind of go on at home, and you don't have to worry about kind of all of the things that happen when you're staying in hotels as well. So it kind of simplifies everything. All you have to worry about is kind of getting up and eating and sleeping. It just kind of makes it very, very straightforward. I think that's part of the relaxation. Certainly for me, that's kind of one of the nice things. It's about all you need is in your little tent. You've kind of got your cocoon almost, which is just the bits and pieces that you need for whatever you're doing, and you have this wonderful little canvas tent to stay in, and it's one of the things as well I really love, and the benefit of kind of being out in these remote places is also the opportunity to see places you wouldn't see otherwise. So kind of really getting out there and experiencing the local culture a little bit more. So often we stay in campsites which are not too far away from the small village, so you'll get to interact with the local people as well, which is really fun. Also, for some of our trips we camp at the community project as well. So again, you literally might be camping in the grounds of a school or something where you're helping, and that's a really great experience too.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and
there's just a real honesty about it all, isn't there? Really, you're kind of back to basics, and it can be very basic, but like you say, comfortable at the same time.
And it just tends to sort of bring the.
I think that's part of the challenge.
Yeah, it sort of brings the group together. Oh yeah, that's one of our photos of camping in a school in Peru, and I think it just brings everyone together, because when you are in hotels or guest houses, people tend to go to their rooms, sort themselves out, this, that, and the other, and then some people might prefer to stay in their room, which is fine if you want that privacy. But personally, I just really enjoy the fact that when you're camping, you're all there. You sat there. You sit outside your tent rather than in your tent, and it's just very social. You're all kind of there sharing the day's experiences, and getting up at the same time in the morning, greeting the sunrise or what have you. And there's something really special about that sort of shared experience of it all, I think, as well.
Of course, there are some drawbacks to that. I'm not sure about you guys, but there's certainly, in my experience, there's always someone that wakes up. It wakes you up with some snoring going on.
Absolutely. Earplugs are essential, as I think we've probably said a few times on these chats. Yep.
Yes, definitely. So, but that again, that kind of comes with the whole experience of it. So it becomes kind of a way of bonding with your teammates, even if it is kind of in a slightly disgruntled manner. But in the next morning you can have the chat about who was it that was snoring last night, and it kind of becomes part of the fun of it and a bit of the camaraderie as well. Absolutely. So it's always taken in good spirit. And I know one of the things I love is hearing there's Molly behind me, sorry about that. One of the things I love is hearing the clattering of the pots and pans in the morning, knowing that breakfast is on its way. That's always a good way to start the day. And the smell of pancakes cooking from the mess tent, or that lovely, in the Sahara, the smell of the mint tea brewing. There's something very special about that mornings.
And actually in India as well, they'll quite often bring you your first cup of tea or coffee for the day to your tent. So you're, like you say, you're lying there still nice and warm, cocooned in your sleeping bag. You're hearing all these noises and smells from the kitchen, and then suddenly there's a little kind of effectively a knock on the tent flap, and here's your cup of tea. It's just perfect.
Oh yeah. What better way to start
it? Absolutely.
Sorry, I was going to say, it's incredible how they manage to cook up these amazing meals and drinks, and the hospitality, considering you are in the middle of nowhere.
It really
it's
is.
Just incredible how the teams kind of go over and beyond expectations, really, I think.
They really do.
Absolutely, yeah. And one of the things as well that we've spoken about a couple of times is the kind of the really interesting side of things in terms of the food as well. So the picture I'm sharing here is in the Sahara, where we were cooking bread in the sand, and that's a kind of an experience that you're not going to get if you're staying in a hotel. It's so authentic. You get that kind of experience of not only learning about the local culture, but also having something that's, you're going to get to eat as well, like freshly baked bread from the sand is just superb. So there's all those small things that come with it as well.
Absolutely. Yeah.
So let's have a chat about which kind of trips include camping in them, and the different kind of standout examples, as it were. And I guess the Sahara is probably one of them, having just mentioned that as a really kind of stunning example. Rubia, do you want to tell us a little bit about what it's like to camp in the Sahara?
I think with the Sahara, it's the fact that you are in the middle of a desert. Your campsite's there, it's all kind of set up. You've got your little toilet tent set up for you. But we've shared numerous pictures. You're sharing them there now. So you've got your little sleeping tents, and then you've got your shared mess tents where you'll have your meals together. And one of the highlights a lot of people say about our Sahara trips is the fact that at night it can be, a lot of people choose not to sleep in the tents. They choose to literally sleep under the stars. So you can kind of stick your head out of the tent and just sleep. It's warm enough to kind of sleep outside, and I think that is just an incredible experience. How many people can actually say they've slept in the middle of the Sahara under millions and billions of stars? That can be definitely one of the highlights of the Sahara trip. I think a lot of people have said is the camping element of it, and just being again at one with nature and out there and just truly living the adventure. Really, I think. What's your favourite bit about being out in the Sahara, Lexi?
It's definitely got to be the stars. I mean, there's no two ways about it. It's just magical. A couple of days ago, or over this past week, there's been the Percy meteor shower here in the UK, and I went out to have a look and see if I could catch any of them, and I managed to catch a few. But I was just sitting there thinking, this is nothing like the Sahara. I wish I was there watching this meteor shower right now. And it's a really magical experience. And like you say, because you're so far off the beaten track, you don't have the worries like light pollution and things like that. So as far as the night sky, that's definitely a highlight.
Yeah.
How about you, Sarah? What's your kind of most memorable camping experience on our trips?
I think, there's been some amazing ones, and certainly the Sahara has been fantastic. Probably my favourite, though, is when we go on our Zambezi trips, canoeing down the Zambezi. That is also just something that's totally incredible. And yes, it is the scenery, but it's also more than anything, it's the animals. So yeah, Lexi's showing some photos here. You literally unload the canoe and you just set up camp right on either the banks of the river or a little island in midstream, and you literally are sat in your tent and you can hear the hippos calling to each other up and down the river. If you're lucky, you can sometimes hear a lion roaring in the distance. There are elephants all over the place, and various types of antelope and buffalo, and just literally being in the middle of all of that wildlife. For me, I just find that totally incredible. I must say, you do feel very safe as well, because I know that's a concern that some people have, but for a start, obviously we set up camp as a little group, and they have a fire, which tends to keep animals away because they've got the whole of the Zambezi to go and explore. They don't want to come to that little spot where we are. They're obviously more scared of us. But if you do need to get out your tent, if you need to go to the toilet in the middle of the night or something, there is always someone on duty, and that's one of our local crew. And so literally they will you wave across to them. They will see that you want to get out the tent. They'll shine their torch around, check that it's all clear for you. Off you go, come back in again. You're completely safe. And yeah, there's just nothing like, I just think, lying there. Quite often, if it's really hot, we don't put the fly sheets on. So you're kind of lying there just under the meshing. So it's like being in a giant mosquito net. And again, looking at the stars, hearing all the sounds of the wildlife around you. It's just something really special.
Wow. I need to get out to the Zambezi. That's one of those trips that I've been, it's been on my wish list for such a long time.
Yeah, it's incredible.
It sounds absolutely incredible. Lexi, you've done the Arctic one, haven't you? That's a completely different experience.
Opposite end of the spectrum, yeah.
It certainly is, yeah. Marnie's just joining me again. Sorry about that. Excuse me. There's the Arctic trip is very different indeed. So, you're going to a place where you've got kind of temperatures of maybe minus 26 at night time, so it's quite extreme. The daytime temperature doesn't usually go above kind of minus 10 if you're lucky. So it's very unusual to kind of imagine camping in conditions like that. And with that particular trip, you've got 3 different styles of camping that you actually get involved with. Well, in fact, 4 if you count the cozy log cabin that you stay in beforehand, but that's a subject for another day. So there's the 3 types of the camping that you do. The first section in the survival portion of the trip is a Scandinavian tent, and it's kind of imagine like a big sort of circus tent kind of contraption. That's what you stay in, and inside that there's a sort of a wood burning stove, which is what keeps you nice and cozy and warm. I'm going to just see if I can try and find a picture of that for you now. It's one of those things that, like I say, you feel like there's no way that you're going to be able to survive in this, sub-zero temperatures, but you've got cozy sleeping bags. And like I say, you've got this amazing wood burning fire in the middle of the tent. And, part of the experience is that you take it in turns as a group to stay up and do fire watch. So you're stoking the fire constantly, making sure that, there's enough heat to kind of keep everyone nice and warm. And in fact, it's really, really cozy and warm in there. It's a lot more comfortable than you'd expect. Then the next stage is that you stay in, or you build, and then you stay in a natural shelter. And I'm just going to try and share a picture of that for you now. So you can see here the shelter being built, and it's literally a case of searching through the forest for branches and, all sorts of different foliage and things to create this wonderful, natural shelter which you will eventually sleep in. You can see this is our shelter here from last year. It doesn't look very cozy, admittedly, but when you consider that it's nice and kind of dense, and all of the fir trees there are keeping all the wind out. Actually, when there's a fire in front of you, that's a really, really cozy place to stay. So it's a really lovely experience. And then finally, and I think probably one of the things that's the most unusual about this trip is the snow hole which you stay in as well. So that's a really remarkable experience. And again, you spend a couple of days building that yourself. So you are literally building your home for the night. I'm going to share a couple of pictures, and then I've got a small video that I want to show you as well, just to kind of give you a feeling for what it's like inside the snow hole. You can see here that this is how you build it. It is very much kind of hands and knees and shovels in the snow, which is a lot of fun. It kind of brings out your inner child. I'll just show you another one here. Here's us inside the snow hole. It's very cozy. It's a very small space, so with your big cozy sleeping bags, you kind of keep nice and cozy and warm. And you've got a candle there. I don't know if you can see that in the picture. That is a sort of dual function. Not only does it keep the light inside the snow hole, but it's also an indicator of the oxygen being there inside, which is of course very important when you're inside a snow hole. I'm going to just try and see if I can share a video of what it's like. Bear with me a second. Hopefully.
It must be quite satisfying to be able to build your own shelter and know that your hard work has kept you all safe and warm for the night.
Yeah.
Absolutely, yeah. And it is hard work. It's really, really tough. You're kind of, believe it or not, you're sweating buckets when you're building it. It's a lot of snow that you've got to shift and create, and it's got to be really well packed so that it's nice and strong. It's a really great feeling of satisfaction that you get there. So here we go. I'm just going to share this video quickly. I'm afraid there's no audio on it. This is what it's like inside. So there we go. That's what it's like to be inside a snow hole. So a really, really fascinating experience. It's very, very cozy, very close quarters. But by that point, you know each other in the group very, very well. So it's quite a lot of fun.
About the temperatures we've been having here in the UK recently, the snow and ice actually looks quite appealing around that at the moment.
Definitely.
Wow, fantastic.
So what?
Go ahead, Ruby.
Sorry, I was just going to say, so what would your guys' top tips be for camping, would you say? What advice would you give for novices out there?
I guess on our trips, I'd say reading the kit list and making sure you have got the appropriate clothing. And although we don't need, as I said, a lot of equipment or anything, you do need to have the right sleeping bag, and you want to be comfortable overnight. You don't want to be either too hot or too cold. So it is important to read that advice and make sure you've got the right clothing and the right sleeping bag with you. That's probably one of the most important things. Would you agree, Lexi?
I would agree, and also just kind of touching on what we said before, earplugs are absolutely essential. Yeah. It makes such a difference when you're camping to have that little bit of peace and quiet.
Yeah.
And also, one of the things that I've found over the years that's really helpful is it's kind of related to packing. So it's about not packing too much, and what you do pack, knowing where it is. There's nothing worse than waking up in the middle of the night, you need to use the bathroom, and you can't find your head torch. So one of my top tips is take your head torch and wrap the band around your wrist. So when you wake up in the night, you've got your head torch on your wrist. You can just pop it on and then get out straight to the loo without any problems. Otherwise, you're sort of scrabbling around your tent trying to find where your head torch is. And by that point, you're bursting to go to the loo and it gets very stressful. So so that would be one of my top tips. How about you, Rubia? Any kind of tips or thoughts on how to make camping more comfortable?
I think it's just knowing your kit, like you say. I know with me, with my sleeping bag, I tested it out at home, like kipping on the floor before going anywhere, just to see, okay, does it fit properly? Is it comfy? And there's millions and millions of different types of sleeping bags out there, some specifically for men, some for women. You've got your mummy style ones, which can narrow down at your legs, and then your left-handed ones. I didn't even realise you could get left-handed sleeping bags, so they're easier to zip if you're a lefty. But yeah, just knowing your kit. And one of the things that I did when I was up in Norway in a sleeping bag was to keep my essentials in the sleeping bag with me. So like a head torch, your glasses, just in the hood, just kind of had it by your head so you knew where you were, so you weren't having to be out shivering in the cold trying to find something before you're having to nip to the loo. So speaking of loos, there's always a bit of apprehension, isn't there, when it comes to bathrooms and campings? What would your top tips for that be?
For toilets, you've just got to remember that everyone does the same thing and there's no shame in it. I think that's probably...
people are always a bit embarrassed, aren't they, to begin with?
And also, again, as far as top tips with regarding toilets and things, is a buff. So we showed a couple of examples of that on our chat a few weeks ago with Trevor. So it's essentially a kind of stretchy piece of fabric that you put over your face and nose, like a face covering that we're so used to now. So having one of those with you that you can put on, covering your mouth and nose when you go into the toilets, if they're a little bit on the smelly side, let's say, then that kind of masks that a little bit, and it makes it a little bit more, I wouldn't say enjoyable, but manageable, we'll say.
Bearable.
Yeah, bearable, exactly.
Absolutely. Yeah, and I think also I find on the trips a lot of people, so whilst we do have the dedicated toilet tents, which more often than not is just a tent covering a hole in the ground, which is fine maybe at the beginning of camp, but sort of by the next morning when a lot of people have used it, it might not be so pleasant. A lot of people actually will just end up going and finding a tree or just going out in the wild, like we're all used to doing when we're walking during the day on the treks anyway. So there's absolutely nothing wrong with that either. I think, people just sort of find what works for them. And it varies hugely. I mean, actually, on some of the camping trips we do, the toilets, and there's even they'll rig up little showers, and they can actually be pretty comfortable. And to be honest, better than some of the ones you might find in a slightly dodgy guest house or something. But in others, yeah, well, there we go, perfect example there. But very, very luxurious toilet. I think that was in Zambia or Kenya?
Zambia, yeah.
Very, very sort of upmarket. But yeah, there's always going to be something that will be fit for purpose. And although people are invariably a little bit apprehensive at the start, after the first day, nobody really minds anymore, and you just get used to your situation, I guess, and it's part of the experience.
Definitely, yeah. I think probably the biggest fear for a lot of the groups I've trekked with is being the first person that needs to go and pee whilst you're walking on the trail, and you have to find that first bush. I think that's probably the thing that's really kind of, it brings a lot of anxiety to people. But once one person has gone and, you know, they come back and that look of relief on their face, and after that, you know, everyone's kind of very comfortable with it. And, you know, like I said, when we started chatting about this side of things, you know, everyone does it. So it's not kind of anything strange or weird. It's, you know, part of human nature. And it's one of those things that kind of, again, it's a really good sort of grounding thing as a group. You know, it kind of takes you all back to the real basics. Everyone has a laugh about it. One of the topics of conversation at dinner time almost always is about toilets, which is brilliant. It's a very strange place to talk about it, but it tends to be when you're sat around the camp table, that's when the conversation happens. So yeah.
We've just had a comment in from Alan saying in Mozambique the locals cut out a circle of carpet for the loo.
There's luxury for you. Brilliant.
So what other kind of things do you think people are apprehensive about? I mean, things like, I guess, bugs. And
bugs is a big one as well, isn't it? And I always think I've kind of come across far more bugs here in the UK or when I go camping or out in the garden than I do on our trips to far-flung destinations. They tend to keep away, I think, because probably, again, back to the fact that we're camping in these remote locations where they've got the whole of the desert or the mountains or wherever it is to go and roam. They don't want to come where we are. They want to go off and be somewhere quiet and peaceful. So you generally don't have as many, I think, as you tend to get in the UK. I don't know, would you think that's your experience as well? Yeah.
Absolutely, yeah. I would say, in fact, depending on the destination, there's even more bugs in the UK. So if you happen to be camping in Scotland at the wrong time of year, you'll get inundated with midges.
Absolutely, yeah.
Awful. Yeah. In fact, we've got some pictures here of a trip that we've done in Scotland. I'll just share those.
And Sarah, you've that trip. Absolutely.
That.
I mean, that was probably the most basic camping I've done on any of our trips. That was real wild camping. You would just turn up and pitch your tent yourself. We'd be cooking our own little dinners over the little kind of portable stoves that we took with us. Obviously, as you can see, one of the good sides of that was the most stunning locations. We were canoeing, so you were always pitching a tent on the banks of a loch or a river. The midges were a problem. It was either raining, or if it stopped raining, the midges came out. So it was kind of one problem or another. But at the end of the day, you find ways of coping with it. We all bought the hats that had the drop-down nets and what have you, and you just kind of got used to it after a while. It wasn't too bad. Just a beautiful way of seeing our own countries here in the UK, which was stunning. Yeah.
And actually, something you've just mentioned that reminds me of one of the benefits of camping. I don't know about you guys, but for me, there is nothing more relaxing than falling asleep to the sound of rain on the tent. There's just something very magical and relaxing about that. I love it.
Or the sound of flowing water if you're camped near a waterfall or a river or something. It's a very lovely sound. Yeah.
Yeah, completely. So we've sort of spoken about apprehensions and things. Sarah, you want to tell us about some of the highlights? I mean, getting into the rhythm of nature.
I think that's kind of a nice part of it. I mean, we've obviously already talked about some of our own sort of personal highlights and things, but I think just that getting into the rhythm with the sun. I mean, yes, it does tend to be early to bed, early to rise, but there's just something very magical about being part of that. And there's nothing better than, because you do invariably get up at sunrise, because that's when all the animals and birds will start chattering and say the cooks will start clattering their pans. But actually getting up at that time of day and just sticking your head out of the tent to see the sunrise, for example, it's just something you don't tend to do when you're at home, or you have to make a real effort to do it. I think for me as well, it just takes me back to childhood. I mean, okay, I did go camping quite a bit as a child, so a part of it is that. But even leaving that aside, just going back to that complete simplicity of it, like you were saying, let's see, you've got everything you need there with you, and there's just something so peaceful and calming and therapeutic, I think, about that.
Absolutely, and I'm just showing a picture here of a couple of team members from our Kilimanjaro trip. You can see here they've got a bowl of water first thing in the morning. They've got their toothbrushes at the ready, and they look very happy to start the day. So that's kind of one of the amazing things about it, isn't it? It's that simplicity, and making do and realizing that you don't really need a lot of the stuff that you think you do to enjoy the experience and really kind of make the most of it. And,
absolutely, yeah.
Definitely.
I think for me it's the bonding as well, the team bonding. It's a way of kind of, you're so back to basics, you kind of rely on each other more, you appreciate people more. Sitting around the campfires and chatting into the night, and that's got to be one of the highlights of all our trips is just the bonding that you get with the team. We've said it numerous times before, you make friends for life on these trips.
Yeah,
absolutely, you do. And like we've said as well about sharing meals together, it's not often these days, unless you're going out for a meal in a restaurant, that you'll sit around a table and have an opportunity to chat to lots of people, and especially people that you don't know. That's something that's very unusual. So having that opportunity to kind of sit in this really remote and beautiful location and share a meal with people that you're starting to get to know is wonderful. Like you say, Rubia, it's that kind of camaraderie and the team spirit of it. It's very, very special, and something that I haven't experienced in a situation where you're not camping. It's really wonderful.
Yeah. And just to sort of add to that, as we mentioned before, but the food that we get cooked for us at all of these campsites is just out of this world. It's none of these sort of, I don't know, boil in the bag kind of easy cook meals that, again, you might have had camping here in the UK as a child, or if you went on guide camps or things. They really are gourmet meals. So there's a guy, I think, is that probably Zambia, I think, cooking eggs for breakfast. And and I know in India, I sort of sat in a tent eating what feels like a banquet. They've just been bringing out more and more courses and homemade chapatis and even homemade gluten-free chapatis for a gluten-free member of the group, and all the different options, and just absolutely incredible. What they can conjure up on a little gas burner or a log fire is quite amazing.
Yeah. Wow, so I mean, I think that kind of covers it all, really, doesn't it?
I want to go camping now.
Yeah, and it is wonderful. And if anyone is inspired by this, obviously at the moment traveling abroad is slightly more difficult, but we are really, really excited about. We've got 3 trips coming up later on this year. Rubia, do you want to tell us quickly a little bit about what we're going to be doing later this year?
We haven't really touched on it much, but we've got the 3.
I think we've lost Rubia's volume.
The Adventure Weekend is actually not a camping trip. It is in a bunkhouse, but the Hadrian's Wall and the Jurassic Coast weekend is certainly a camping. So with all the restrictions in place, we are asking you to bring your own tents along. And it's a static camp where you'll be staying at a campsite and walking one way, coming back, and then the next day you'll be walking a different route and coming back. So all the details are on our website. We'll stick the link up at the bottom of the comments here. You've got 2 more weeks to book. Bookings will close at the end of the month. So booking.
Just to sort of add to that, if anyone is sort of thinking of doing that almost as an introduction to camping, and you don't have your own tent, don't let that put you off. Have a word with us, because we do have some tents that we can share with you. As Rubia sort of said, the main reason we're not doing that is because of the hygiene and the kind of safety at the moment of you each having your own tent. But don't let that be a barrier. You can buy very cheap tents out there. We're happy to point you in the right direction. Or if you really don't want to, we do have a few that we will be able to lend out. So don't let that put you off. Just give us a shout. We'd love you to come and join us.
And some of the destinations that we're going to, they're just spectacular places to visit. And particularly the Jurassic Coast, when the weather's nice, it feels like you're in the Mediterranean somewhere. The sea is so blue. It's wonderful. Of course, Hadrian's Wall, you've got, it's steeped in history. It's a really, really magical place to spend some time. So if you're interested, then we'd love to have you join us. We're still taking bookings at the minute, so it'd be fantastic to have you along. So, Rubia, are we going to be doing a photo competition this week?
I was just about to say, before we sign off, send in your photos of your best camping photos, really. So your best camping sites, your best location of a campsite. Just send your photos in with the comments, and the best one will get featured on our Facebook page.
So look forward to seeing those.
Sarah, what are we talking about next week?
Okay, so next week we're going to go back overseas, and we're going to talk about mainly focusing on Thailand, trips that we've got coming up next year, including our brand new Tuk Tuk Challenge, which is something totally different that we're all very excited about. So if you're interested in finding out more about that, or just chatting about Thailand in general, looking ahead to next year, then come and join us next week.
Okay. Looking forward to it. Thank you so much, everybody, for joining us today. And if you've got any kind of thoughts or observations about your experiences with camping, then pop them in the comments. So I'd love to hear your thoughts, and of course, share your pictures for being with a chance of being featured on our competition. Otherwise, we'll see you next week.
Thank you for joining us. Bye.
Bye.
Bye.